Africans continue to feel the effects of badly run state-owned entities, corruption, destruction of essential infrastructure and mismanagement, some of the main issues. From legislation to implementation, there's a myriad of problems that continue to cause problems. Let's discuss this further now. I'm joined by attorney at B Maharajh Attorneys, Avinesh Maharajh, and I've got the CEO of the Black Business Council, Kganki Matabane, who's joining us. We're also hoping to be joined by senior researcher at Corruption Watch, Melusi Ncala. But let me bring you first, Kganki. Good afternoon. Welcome to today, and as well to you, Avinesh. Kganki, when you saw the story yesterday, for example, that the Hawks have arrested a so-called kingpin of fuel theft from Transnet worth millions of rands, what did you think?
Good afternoon, Braden and the viewers, and thank you very much for having us. We welcome the arrest, and we hope that won't be the last one. We hope the other people who are breaking the law, like in other places like ESCOM and other SOCs, are arrested. But I think just going back to SOCs, and even private companies, in companies we have what is called a risk management process. So when you get appointed as a CEO, you need to implement the risk management process. So you'll have a list of risks that the company is facing, and then we'll have the mitigating factors of those risks. And that's the responsibility of a company. The state will play its role, but remember, the state doesn't have much capacity. They can't even arrest people who are raping our sisters and our kids. So the responsibility then rests with the company. So the company then will have a security director or something like that, who will then deal with those type of issues. From the company point of view, and then they'll have what is called internal control. So they will be able to know what amount of assets they have, the movement of assets, and all those type of things. And now we even have technology that should trace some of these things that are happening in companies. So the responsibility, as far as we're concerned, rests solely on the CEO of that SOC or a company.
Yeah, but if the company like Transnet, in this case, for example, Kganki, has been targeted with the theft of oil and damage to infrastructure, transit facilities, it also speaks to security. But I want to bring you in, Avinesh, as we begin this discussion. From a legal perspective, I mean, do you think the laws that exist can assist the state-owned enterprises to prevent such theft?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Dan. And also good afternoon to all your listeners. The existing laws that we have in respect of damage and also theft and also theft to state-owned enterprises and also the public sector, those laws are, how can I put it to you? Those laws are there, and those laws which are presently being implemented, those laws are very good. It is just a matter of I think it was manpower of trying to apprehend these criminals. That is the problem. For example, the Minimum Sentences Act for theft of copper cables and also the like is 15 years for individual, and for a public company or for a company or for a entity, the minimum sentence is 100 million rands, or I think it's 30 years imprisonment if a director of a company or a shareholder is involved in theft of state infrastructure, so to speak.
Yeah, so the laws are there, but it's a question of capacity in trying to implement them and make sure that those responsible are caught. We're seeing the Hawks in action. Melusi Ncala, good afternoon. I hope you can hear me. Senior researcher at Corruption Watch. Welcome to our discussion. Can you hear me, Melusi?
Yes, Ben. Good afternoon, and thank you for having us.
Yeah, from a corruption watch perspective, what would be your concerns? I mean, we just started off by talking about the latest move by the Hawks, nabbing the alleged kingpin behind the Transnet oil theft and infrastructure damage. Just the other day, including a Mozambican national was arrested for tampering with our national oil pipeline in Vrede in the Free State.
Yeah, I mean, those are positive developments in as far as law enforcement making sure that infrastructure, especially that which belongs to the state, is looked after, or at least is kept safely and securely. And we welcome those kind of advancements by law enforcement, considering that we've went through a period where nothing was really happening. But the problem is, though, that often what
we seem to have lost Melusi. They will try and reconnect with him. Kganki, my next question was going to be, we are seeing the action. Yes, you are mentioning that the CEOs have responsibility and are accountable for risk management in protecting the infrastructure of the state-owned enterprises. But the laws as well need to be implemented, fully.
Yes, you are right. Once, for example, a case is taken from an SOC, it gets reported to the law enforcement agencies. And as we all know, in South Africa, the government is still trying to rebuild our law enforcement agencies. It has been basically destroyed, and currently there's not much capacity in law enforcement. We see people who are supposed to be taken to task, walking the streets. So that needs to change. And that is what causes the current lawlessness in South Africa. We have people, for example, who will go and demand 30% from construction companies. We've got people who are mining illegally in parts of South Africa, and nothing is done. And then those are the type of things that are encouraging people to say, then I can go and steal oil from the pipeline. I can go and steal from Eskom, because they see that not much is happening. So the law enforcement agency should be in such a way that it sort of before someone does something, they think twice. But at the moment, people think it's a free for all, and people do as they wish. And then that is a problem that we need to stop now, because if we don't, it's going to go to a situation where everyone does as they wish, and the whole country becomes ungovernable. So
yeah, some people, Kganki, are saying we are now a mafia state.
I think we're almost there. We're not yet there. We just need to stop whatever is happening at the moment. When people go and demand 30%, they must be arrested instead of them being entertained. And you know, in law enforcement, you just set an example of 2 or 3 people, everyone will stop. Okay. There's no deterrent. Deterrent.
Yeah, I just want to establish from Avinesh, who's an attorney. Avinesh, do you know of examples where such is happening? I mean, you've mentioned the laws and the kinds of penalties one would pay or be jailed for in terms of sentencing if they were found guilty. Are you aware that there's been successful cases in the way of protecting infrastructure, state-owned infrastructure?
Yes, yes, Dan. I'll give you one example, right? And in this case here, we must really thank the law enforcement. Had it not been for them, then these criminals would not have been apprehended. I think in around about March 2018, in the Brakpan area, there were 5 people who were basically digging up in the woodlands, so to speak. And they were spotted by the policemen, and thereafter they began to run. They were apprehended, and thereafter the cops found a whole lot of think it was copper cables, and it was all around their shoulder. They had it around the shoulder, and the law enforcement finally managed to apprehend 3 of them. They thereafter appeared in the magistrate's court, and they were sentenced to 15 years imprisonment. And now, normally you get theft, right? Theft, normally it is a common law offense, and your sentence can range from a fine of 100 rands to whatever it is, you understand. But when it comes to the state then implemented or promulgated the Criminal Law Amendment Act. I think that was in 2015. It implemented that act. In terms of that act, it addressed the question of the safety of our infrastructure, and also the protection of our infrastructure from criminals. And in terms of that act, the Justice Department had or Parliament implemented the Minimum Sentence Act in respect of the crime of theft in as far as the infrastructure, both private and public, is concerned. So thereafter, what happened was that these guys were sentenced to 15 years in jail, and their legal representative thereafter took it on appeal to the High Court in Pretoria. And there the judges confirmed the sentence which the magistrate had imposed against the accused on the grounds that there were no there were no compelling circumstances to justify a lower sentence. So the value of the copper pipe, those copper cables may have been valued at around about 30,000 rands. But what the policemen saw them doing, they were actually digging into the grounds, and after taking out that cable, and I think it affected the electricity supply in that area, because obviously it was all cut off. So for a value of 30,000 rands, these criminals had to serve a time of 15 years, which was obviously which was in fact confirmed on appeal.
Now, just one example. Yeah. Sorry, Avinesh. We don't want to go through the whole case. We don't have time to go through the whole case. It was just to get a quick example. Melusi, I've got you back. You were answering my question when we lost you about, you said you welcome the arrest, you welcome the movements by the Hawks as Corruption Watch in terms of this Transnet fuel theft arrest of a so-called kingpin that we saw yesterday. But you've got some reservations.
Yes, because what happens, Ben, is that usually, based on the cases of corruption that we've received, is that there are other players involved. You know, it's not just the, when you look at the criminal syndicate, it involves political figures, it involves administrators, and it also involves a sophisticated scheme where the attempt essentially is to make sure that the state-owned entity rolls out a procurement process yet again. So, for example, if infrastructure is damaged, then to replace whatever has been lost by the state, then they have to issue a tender for that, and there's always someone to benefit from those particular. So it runs deeper than what we realize. It's not simply just common thieves going out in the streets and stealing. That, yes, there's an element of that, of course, but beyond that, there are political figures that are involved, and it will be helpful if the law enforcement actually looks into those type of issues.
So there could be bigger fish to fry in this kind of criminal activity, but that sounds like it's tantamount to economic sabotage.
Yeah, it would be if indeed the police and authorities looked into further into these cases, because essentially when you look at what state-owned entities do, looking at ESCOM, for example, supplies power to the entire nation whenever I can, of course. And under current circumstances, we have health services that are operating under very strenuous circumstances. People are dying literally in theaters. We've got clinics that cannot operate fully because of a lack of. So, and then when you look at Transnet and PRASA, for example, those are state-owned entities that are supposed to help us with economic activity. So in light of all of those factors, yes, we could think of it as economic sabotage or huge economic crimes.
Yeah, and Kganki, if that could be the case, I mean, just look at Eskom right now. I just interviewed Professor Mampweli from Stellenbosch University, an energy expert, who said just the other day we had 5 units in 5 different power stations tripping in one day. That made stage 4 load shedding was continuing. What a coincidence. You begin to think, could there be some kind of sabotage here as well? Should we be treating these kind of attacks on state-owned infrastructure as treason?
Yes, I think where we've got evidence, we should, and I think hence we always say that we need bold leadership, because when you don't have bold leadership, people will always try and take chances, and we agree with the fact that when people get arrested, we need to see big fishes arrested, because if you are arresting the foot soldiers, the crime will never end. But you need to get deeper into the big fish, and then that can only be done when you have law enforcement agency that is well capacitated, especially especially from investigations point of view. But we just need to make sure that those who are found to be sabotaging the country, we deal with them. But we need to separate sabotage and excuses. For me, anything that comes from Eskom nowadays, I don't believe it, because they've been giving so many excuses. It's either the sea is too strong and the sea wind is too strong, the rain is there, they've lost credibility. And they are trying to divert us from the real issue of providing electricity. They were hired to provide electricity. We don't have electricity. They are giving us excuses, and they are announcing the stages that they don't themselves, that they don't even know how long they'll last. So we need to separate between the two. We need to deal decisively with excuses, by making sure that those people who are responsible for those excuses and not providing electricity are fired.
Yeah. Avinesh, legally, do you think this law that you've mentioned, the criminal amendments bill that was changed in 2015, is enough? I mean, you gave an example of a small crime in terms of amount, 30,000 rand, but a severe sentence of 15 years. But if these acts are bordering on sabotaging economic activity, would you believe from a legal perspective that harsher laws would help us?
It's difficult because, I mean, at the moment we have the, I mean, like 15 years is very, very harsh for, for an individual that has stolen stuff which is only about 30,000. The bail conditions for them is also harsh. In terms of the law, as far as the bail is concerned, they will not be able to get police bail. They will have to go in front of a magistrate as far as it comes to bail, even if the amount is low. I suppose, I mean, at the end of the day, as I see it, we just need maybe more when it comes to policing, etc. Harsher laws, we can have harsher laws, but you would still have to police those laws there, so
it comes back. It comes back to what you said earlier and what Kganki said about the capacity of law enforcement and therefore the resourcing. Melusi, for you, what should government be doing to make sure that such acts of attacks, as I call them, against state-owned infrastructure, which is beset with corruption, as you said earlier, that we put an end to them? What should be done?
I mean, we could easily jump on the accountability ticket, which is valid, of course. You know, we need to call for accountability. We need to make sure that our law enforcement is fully capacitated and has the necessary skills to investigate these crimes. And then following that, not just investigate, but also then be able to hand the cases over to the National Prosecuting Authority, who will then be bold enough to say that, okay, we can definitely present this case to the judiciary, whereupon people will hopefully be held accountable. But then we also need to change the culture in terms of how we think about issues of corruption in relation to just in society in general, I guess, because, you know, it cannot be viewed as a profit-making way, that it's the only way to make money. So to deal with corruption, you need to address several things. The culture of corruption, for example, within the state-owned entities. So what are the networks that exist? How do people work there? The executives, all the way down to the ordinary staff member. And then we also need to figure out how, what processes do these state-owned entities have to roll out tenders. So it's an entire systemic approach that we need to have if we ought to bring about change in terms of how we view incidents of corruption.
Kganki, very, very briefly with you as we conclude your parting remarks.
Yeah, I think the government should continue to strengthen the law enforcement agencies, but we need a bold leadership where decisions are taken, and the laws that are not necessarily that strong needs to be strengthened so that the big fishes are taken into custody and they serve their time in jail, and you'll be able to see less and less crime, because people, for example, are asking themselves what happened to the PRASA network. That was economic sabotage, but there's no one who's been held accountable. No one went to jail. And those are the type of things that are encouraging other people to enter into this type of exercises, because they don't see anyone being held accountable. So we need to have the culture of holding people accountable and strengthening the law enforcement agencies.
Yeah, strengthening the law enforcement agencies. Avinesh, you made the same point. You said harsher laws are not necessarily the way forward. Some parting thoughts for you as we are concluding, Avinesh, very quickly.
I would like to say that I would like really thank the policemen for all the hard work they do in this. But however, I feel that a lot of our policemen should be more patriotic to our country and make sure that they do not accept bribes, especially when they apprehend the big fishes, that is the scrapyards, etc. They should make sure that these people are charged, and they should not accept bribes, because by them accepting bribes, and these crimes will just continue. So yeah. I would say that I must thank them, but also I think they should be more patriotic to our country.
Thank you very much, Avinesh Maharajh, who's an attorney from B Maharajh Attorneys, Kganki Matabane, the CEO of Black Business Council, and Melusi Ncala, senior researcher at Corruption Watch, for your thoughts this afternoon of how should we be dealing with the ongoing attacks on state-owned infrastructure damages and theft. Thankfully, the Hawks just going on to arrest the so-called kingpin yesterday in Transnet fuel theft. Plus, there are several other individuals, including a Mozambican national, who were arrested recently. They'll all be appearing in court in the Free State in a few weeks' time. You're watching Today on eNCA DSTV Channel 43. Stay